Welcome to our channel. Today we're diving deep into Who Stole My Pension by Robert Kiyosaki and Edward Siedle. It's a book that tackles this looming global pension crisis, something that might sound like a problem for later, but it's really relevant for everyone, regardless of age.
Yeah, it's about taking control of your financial future, which, by the way, if you're looking for some extra motivation on that front, affirmifyjourney.com is a great resource for personalized zodiac affirmations and other tools.
I love that. Okay, so back to pensions. I'll admit the title, Who Stole My Pension, grabbed my attention. But I'm not even close to retirement, so why should I care about this now?
That's exactly the misconception this book tackles. It's not just about retirees. It's about the entire system and how it impacts us all, whether we realize it or not.
Okay.
Think of it like this. Even if you're not retired, your parents, grandparents, or even future children might be relying on pensions.
Okay, that makes sense. So what's the central argument? Is it really as dire as the title suggests?
The authors paint a pretty stark picture, arguing that we're on the brink of the biggest retirement crisis in history. They say millions are potentially facing poverty in their golden years. And it's not just because of individual choices. The system itself is flawed.
So it's not just about people not saving enough. There's something fundamentally wrong with the system.
Exactly. They introduced this term GRUNC, which stands for those powerful forces. Think big banks, Wall Street, even governments, who benefit from keeping the financial system complex and opaque. The book argues that these entities have manipulated the system to their advantage, often at the expense of everyday people.
So how does this GRUNCH factor into the pension crisis specifically?
Well, the book traces it back to a few key events, starting with the 1971 decision to take the US dollar off the gold standard.
Okay, remind me, what does that even mean, off the gold standard? I remember hearing about it, but never fully understood the implications.
Simply put, it meant that the US dollar was no longer backed by a tangible asset, like gold. Kiyosaki and Siedle argue that this led to the creation of what they call fake money. Money that isn't tied to anything concrete and can be printed seemingly out of thin air.
So how does that connect to pensions?
Well, when money is essentially created out of thin air, it can lead to inflation. Think about it. If there's suddenly more money circulating, but the same amount of goods and services, prices go up, and that erodes the value of savings, especially for those on fixed incomes like retirees.
It's like running on a treadmill. You're working hard, but you're not really getting anywhere.
That's a great analogy. And that brings us to another issue the book highlights, the rise of shadow banking.
Okay, I've heard that term thrown around, but honestly, I have no idea what it means.
Imagine a secret financial playground where the usual rules don't apply. That's essentially what shadow banking is. It's a vast network of financial institutions and transactions that operate outside traditional banking regulations.
So less oversight, more risk.
Exactly. Think hedge funds, private equity firms. They play a huge role in the global economy, but with very little transparency. And pensions, which are supposed to be safe and secure, are increasingly relying on these alternative, risky investments.
Wow, that sounds pretty alarming.
The authors definitely see it as a red flag. They dedicate a whole section to the lack of audits in many pension funds.
Wait, so these massive funds, responsible for people's livelihoods, aren't being properly audited?
That's what they claim. They even talk about a multi-billion-dollar pilot's pension that's never been audited. It's shocking. And it highlights the need for greater accountability and transparency.
I'm starting to understand why the book is titled, Who Stole My Pension? It seems like there's a lot of finger-pointing going on.
They definitely call out what they see as corruption and mismanagement within the system, but they also offer a lot of positive insights and solutions.
Like what?
Well, for example, they contrast the prevailing pension investment strategies with the advice of someone we all know, Warren Buffett.
Good old Warren Buffett, the voice of reason in the world of investing.
Exactly. And as you might expect, Buffett advocates for a more cautious and conservative approach. He's a big proponent of low-cost index funds and warns against excessive fees and risky investments, which is precisely what many pension funds seem to be doing.
It's like they're choosing the flashy sports car over the reliable minivan, going for short-term excitement instead of long-term stability.
That's a great way to put it. And what's interesting is that the book doesn't just leave us with a sense of doom and gloom. They actually provide some actionable advice on how individuals can fight back against this GRUNCH.
So it's not just about complaining about the system, it's about taking action. What do they suggest we do?
One of the most interesting suggestions is crowdfunding forensic investigations. of your own pension.
What, you mean like getting a group of people together to hire an investigator to look into how the pension is being managed?
Exactly. It's a way for individuals to join forces and demand transparency. Remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your finances.
I'm starting to see a theme here. It's not about blindly trusting the system. It's about taking ownership and becoming informed.
Absolutely. And to further that point, they also highlight the importance of financial literacy in general. The more you understand how money works, the better equipped you are to make sound decisions and protect your financial future.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's not just about pensions. It's about becoming financially savvy overall.
Exactly. Now, one thing that helps bring these complex concepts to life in the book is the use of real-world examples and anecdotes.
Ooh, I love a good story. What are some of the most memorable ones?
Well, one that struck me was the story of Edward Siedel's father.
Okay, tell me more.
He was a gerontology doctor, someone who specialized in the care of older adults, which ties into the whole theme of retirement.
Interesting connection.
But here's the twist. Siedel's father disappeared in Uganda under the rule of Idi Amin, a brutal dictator known for human rights abuses.
Wow, that took a dark turn.
It's a pretty intense story, but it highlights how Siedel's early exposure to the complexities of pensions and estates stemmed from trying to untangle his father's affairs after his disappearance.
That's a powerful personal connection to the topic. It shows how these financial systems are not just abstract concepts, but can have a very real impacts on individual lives.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that even in the most chaotic of circumstances, these systems can be exploited.
Okay, so that's a pretty heavy story. Any other anecdotes that stand out?
Yes. There's also a fascinating account of Robert Kiyosaki's own experience serving in Vietnam.
Now that's interesting. I know he's written a lot about financial education, but I didn't know about his military background.
His time in Vietnam really shaped his worldview, especially regarding traditional paths to financial security.
In what way?
Well, it led him to reject the traditional route of going to college, getting a job, and climbing the corporate ladder. He saw firsthand the fragility of those systems and decided to seek alternative ways to build wealth and achieve financial independence.
So his experiences in Vietnam were a catalyst for his journey into entrepreneurship and financial education.
Absolutely. And that rebellious spirit, that questioning of conventional wisdom, runs throughout the book.
And they take it a step further by connecting their message to a famous political campaign slogan, right?
You're thinking of the 1992 Clinton campaign and "It's the economy, stupid" line. Well, Kiyosaki and Siedle put their own spin on it. It's our money, stupid.
I love that. It's a bold statement that really drives home the need for individuals to take control of their financial futures.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming ownership, understanding where your money is going, and demanding transparency and accountability from the institutions that manage it.
It's about becoming financially literate and empowered, not just blindly trusting the system.
Absolutely. Now, there's this really interesting anecdote about Kiyosaki meeting a wealthy investor at a palace in Rome.
Okay, this sounds intriguing. I'm picturing marble fountains and Renaissance art.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, this investor, who clearly knew a thing or two about building wealth, shared his time-tested strategy, he said. 1/3 in land, 1/3 in art, and 1/3 in gold.
It's like a classic portfolio for the ageist.
Exactly. It highlights a key takeaway from the book. True wealth isn't necessarily tied to Wall Street's volatile markets. It's about diversifying beyond traditional investments and considering assets that have intrinsic value over the long term.
It's about building a portfolio that can weather economic storms, not just ride the waves of the market.
Absolutely. And speaking of weathering storms, remember that term GRUACE we talked about? Well, they use a rather unexpected analogy to describe the current fragility of the global economy.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
They compare it to the Three Little Pigs.
Wait, seriously? The children's story?
Yep. They use this classic tale to illustrate how our current economic system, built on a foundation of debt and complex financial instruments, is essentially a house of straw just waiting to be blown over.
So the big bad wolf is GRUNK in this analogy.
Precisely. And they argue that most of us are living in those flimsy houses of straw, unaware of the risks swirling around us.
Okay, that's a pretty vivid image. But the Three Little Pigs did build a house of bricks that could withstand the wolf, right? What's the equivalent of that in the financial world?
That's where their advice comes in. They offer guidance on how to build that financial house of bricks through things like financial education, diversifying beyond traditional investments, and taking control of your financial destiny. It's about becoming more resilient and less susceptible to the whims of the system.
So it's about becoming our own bricklayers, so to speak, creating a solid foundation for our financial futures.
Exactly. Now, building on that analogy, they introduce a concept they call the bonfire of the currencies.
Okay, that sounds intense. What's that all about?
It's a powerful metaphor describing how our wealth is systematically eroded through inflation and currency manipulation. Remember their point about fake money? This is where it comes into play.
So it's like they're saying our hard-earned money is going up in smoke?
Essentially, yes. And this bonfire is fueled by several factors, including the rise of shadow banking and the shift from those old-school defined benefit pension plans to the more individualistic defined contribution plans, like the 401k.
Okay, so it sounds like we're in a pretty precarious situation. Our money's losing value, the system is rigged against us, and our pensions are at risk. Is there any hope? What can we do to fight back against GRU and Siege and build that house of bricks?
That's the empowering part of the book. They offer practical advice. But it does require a shift in mindset. They really encourage readers to embrace the power of entrepreneurship.
So becoming our own bosses, creating our own businesses.
It's more than just being your own boss. It's about building businesses and assets that generate real wealth, independent of the traditional job market.
It's about creating our own financial ecosystems, rather than relying on a system that might be working against us.
Exactly. And that goes hand in hand with their emphasis on financial literacy. They argue that the more you understand how money works, the better equipped you are to make sound decisions and protect your financial future.
It's like they're saying, don't just play the game, learn how to create your own rules.
Exactly. They even offer specific tips on how to invest outside the traditional stock market, like exploring real estate, precious metals, and even intellectual property, things that have intrinsic value beyond just the fluctuations of the stock market.
So it's about thinking outside the box, or maybe outside the Wall Street box, to be more precise.
Exactly. But let's get back to this idea of GR and Siege for a moment. Who are these villains in the story? Are they just greedy individuals? Or is it something more systemic?
That's a great question. Are they pointing fingers at specific people, or is it more about the system itself?
It's a nuanced issue, and the book explores it thoughtfully. They don't necessarily paint individuals as evil masterminds. Instead, they point to the structures and incentives that create this environment of exploitation.
So it's not about demonizing individuals. It's about understanding the systemic factors that contribute to these problems.
Exactly. They argue that Siege thrives on certain human flaws. Greed, the desire for more, even at the expense of others. But it's the system that enables and amplifies those flaws. Remember the story about Kiyosaki learning about lying, cheating, and stealing from his rich dad?
Yes, it wasn't about condoning those actions, but rather understanding the darker side of human nature, especially when money is involved.
Exactly. And they suggest that Ed Siege thrives on this inherent human flaw, the desire for more, even at the expense of others.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here, but let's bring this back to pensions for a moment. Are they saying that defined contribution plans, like the 401k, are inherently bad? Is there any way to make them work for us?
They don't necessarily say they're bad, but they do highlight their limitations. Remember, these plans were designed in part by Drun and Siege to shift responsibility away from employers and onto individuals.
So instead of having a guaranteed pension, we're now responsible for managing our own retirement savings.
Exactly. And they argue that this puts a lot of pressure on individuals who might not have the financial literacy or resources to make informed investment decisions.
It's like being handed a leaky bucket and told, go fetch your own water. You can still collect some water, but you're going to have to work a lot harder and be more strategic about it.
That's a great analogy. But even with a leaky bucket, you can still collect some water if you're strategic. The book stresses the importance of educating yourself about investment options, minimizing fees, and diversifying beyond just stocks and bonds.
So it's about taking ownership, even within a flawed system, and learning how to play the game to the best of our ability.
Exactly. And that ties into another powerful idea from the book, the need for transparency. They argue that secrecy breeds corruption, and nowhere is this more evident than in the world of alternative investments.
Remember that shadow banking system we talked about? It sounds like those alternative investments are right up GREK's alley.
Absolutely. They highlight how these complex financial instruments, often shrouded in secrecy, create opportunities for mismanagement and even outright fraud.
It's like a magician's trick. If you can't say how it's done, you're more likely to be fooled.
Exactly. And they use the example of the U.S. Airways pilot's pension plan to illustrate this point. Remember how the pilots discovered their pension had never been audited?
Wow, that's incredible. A group of pilots who are used to meticulous procedures and safety checks suddenly realizing that their retirement nest egg has been handled with so little oversight.
It was a real wake-up call for them. And the book uses this example to emphasize the importance of being proactive, asking questions, and demanding accountability from those managing our money.
It's about saying, we're not going to be kept in the dark any longer. We deserve to know what's happening with our money.
Exactly. And they even provide practical steps on how to get involved and demand transparency.
Like what? What are some things we can do?
Well, for starters, they suggest contacting our pension providers and requesting audit reports. We can also attend board meetings and ask questions about the investment strategy and fees.
So it's about becoming informed and engaged, not just assuming that everything is fine behind the scenes.
Exactly. And if there are serious concerns about mismanagement or fraud, they even suggest joining forces with others to crowdfund independent investigations.
That's an interesting idea. It's like pooling resources to hire a financial detective to uncover the truth.
Exactly. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we understand about these systems, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves.
Okay, I'm starting to see how empowering this book can be. It's not just about complaining about the system. It's about taking action and becoming financially savvy.
Exactly. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about a concept that might be familiar but is often misunderstood: the difference between real and fake money.
Okay, I'm ready to learn more.
Remember how we talked about the US dollar going off the gold standard back in 1971? Well, Kiyosaki and Siedle argued that this essentially turned our currency into fake money.
So it's like money that's not backed by anything tangible, just numbers on a screen.
Essentially, yes. They argue that money should be backed by a real asset, like gold or silver, to maintain its value. Without that backing, they claim it's essentially an IOU from the government, subject to manipulation and inflation.
Okay, I'm starting to see where they're going with this. So how does this concept of fake money impact our savings and investments?
Well, when money is essentially created out of thin air, as they argue is happening now, it can lead to inflation as more money circulates. But the amount of goods and services stays the same, prices go up, and the purchasing power of our money goes down.
It's like playing a game where the rules keep changing, and the deck is stacked against you.
That's a great way to put it. And this is particularly problematic for those on fixed incomes, like retirees, who see their savings dwindle as prices rise.
So what do they suggest we do about it? Should we all go out and buy gold bars?
They do recommend diversifying into assets like precious metals, but it's part of a broader strategy. They argue that we need to find alternative stores of value, things that are less susceptible to the whims of central banks and government manipulation.
So things that hold their value regardless of what's happening with the dollar.
Exactly. And they point to things like real estate, precious metals, and even intellectual property as examples. These are assets that have intrinsic value beyond just the number printed on a piece of paper.
So it's about building a portfolio that can weather economic storms, not just ride the waves of the market.
Exactly. And this brings us to another alarming concept they introduce: the shadow banking system.
Okay, I'm starting to get a bit nervous now. What's so scary about shadow banking?
Well, it's like a parallel financial universe operating outside traditional banking regulations. It's a vast network of institutions and transactions, often very complex and opaque, with very little oversight. Think hedge funds, private equity firms. They play a significant role in the global economy, but with minimal transparency.
It's like a financial Wild West out there, except instead of saloons, you have hedge funds.
That's a great analogy. And they argue that the shadow banking system has grown to a point where it poses a significant risk to the global economy. Remember the 2008 financial crisis? That was triggered in part by the collapse of the shadow banking system.
It's like building a house on a foundation of sand. It might look stable for a while, but it's ultimately unsustainable.
Exactly. And what's even more concerning is that they argue that the shadow banking system is fueled by the same forces that are driving the pension crisis: lack of transparency, excessive risk-taking, and a focus on short-term profits over long-term stability.
So it's like a vicious cycle, a system designed to benefit those at the top, often at the expense of everyday people and their retirement security.
Exactly. And they highlight how pensions play a role in this system, often unwittingly feeding the beast by investing in these risky, opaque financial instruments offered by shadow banks.
It's like throwing gasoline on an already raging fire.
That's a powerful image, and it underscores their message of urgency. We need to wake up, get informed, and take action to protect our financial futures.
So where do we even begin? It all feels so overwhelming.
They offer a lot of practical advice, but it starts with changing our mindset. They encourage readers to become more like entrepreneurs, not necessarily starting businesses, but adopting an entrepreneurial approach to managing our finances.
So taking control, thinking outside the box, finding creative solutions.
Exactly, and that goes hand in hand with their emphasis on financial literacy. The more we understand how money works, the better equipped we are to navigate this complex system and make informed decisions.
It's about becoming financially savvy, not just blindly trusting the experts or the institutions that claim to have our best interests at heart.
Absolutely. And to help illustrate these complex concepts, the book is filled with real-world examples and anecdotes.
Okay, I'm ready for another story. What else did they share?
Well, there's a rather chilling one about the U.S. Airways pilots' pension plan. Remember how we talked about the pilots discovering their pension had never been audited?
Yes, that was shocking.
They go into detail about how the pilots, who are used to meticulous procedures and safety checks, were stunned to learn about this lack of oversight. They felt betrayed and realized that they needed to take matters into their own hands.
So they became financial detectives, so to speak.
Exactly. And it's a powerful lesson for all of us. We can't just assume that our pensions or other investments are being managed responsibly. We need to be proactive, ask questions, and demand transparency.
It's about becoming informed and empowered, not just blindly trusting the system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, there's another anecdote that dives into a specific type of investment that they are particularly wary of: alternative investments.
Okay, remind me, what are alternative investments again?
These are investments that fall outside the traditional categories of stocks, bonds, and cash. Think hedge funds, private equity, real estate partnerships, things that are often marketed as offering high returns, but come with significant risks and complexity.
It's like venturing into the financial Wild West, potentially lucrative, but also rife with danger.
Exactly. And they use a rather strong phrase to describe these investments: financial weapons of mass destruction.
Wow, that's intense. What makes them so dangerous?
It's a combination of factors, but the key ones are complexity, opacity, and high fees. These investments are often structured in ways that make it difficult to understand the underlying assets or the true risks involved.
It's like buying a car without being allowed to look under the hood. You're taking a huge leap of faith.
Exactly. And the lack of transparency creates opportunities for all sorts of shenanigans, from hidden fees to outright fraud.
It's like playing poker with a professional card sharp who's dealing from his own deck.
Precisely. And the book argues that many pension funds, desperate for higher returns in a low-interest rate environment, are falling prey to these risky, opaque investments.
So instead of investing in safe, reliable minivans, they're going for the flashy, high-performance sports cars that might crash and burn.
That's a great analogy. They're gambling with people's retirement security, chasing high returns without fully understanding the risks involved.
And who benefits from this?
Well, the book argues that it's often the people who create and manage these alternative investments who reap the biggest rewards, while those who invest in them are left holding the bag if things go south.
That's like paying a hefty commission to a salesperson who's selling you a product you don't need and might even harm you.
Exactly. And they offer some practical advice for pension beneficiaries, such as demanding greater transparency from their pension providers, scrutinizing investment fees, and advocating for more conservative investment strategies.
It's about being an informed and vigilant investor, not just blindly trusting those in charge.
Absolutely. They even suggest exploring alternative retirement savings strategies, such as building your own investment portfolio outside the traditional pension system.
So it's about diversifying our options, not putting all our eggs in one potentially fragile basket.
Exactly.
It's like taking control of our financial ship and charting our own course, rather than relying on a captain who might be steering us towards rocky shores.
That's a great way to put it. Now, there's a chapter in the book that really resonated with me, and it might seem a bit unexpected at first. It's about the power of words and how they can shape our financial realities.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How do words play into our finances?
It dives into the psychology of money and how our language can either empower us or hold us back. Remember Kiyosaki's famous phrase, "The rich don't work for money."
Yes, it's a statement that challenges our traditional ideas about work and wealth. But how does that translate into everyday language?
Well, they argue that our language can create self-fulfilling prophecies. For example, constantly saying, "I can't afford it," reinforces a scarcity mindset.
It's like telling yourself a story about lack and limitation.
Exactly. But if you shift your language and ask, "How can I afford it?" you open up possibilities and solutions.
It's like the difference between a closed door and an open window. One limits you while the other invites exploration.
Exactly. And they provide specific examples of how to shift your language to attract abundance and create opportunities. Instead of saying, I'm in debt, try saying, I'm working towards financial freedom.
So it's about changing our internal dialogue, the way we talk to ourselves about money.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our words have power. And we can use that power to create a more positive and abundant financial reality.
I love that. It's a reminder that we have more control over our financial lives than we often realize.
Absolutely. And building on that idea of taking control, there's a fascinating concept they introduce called infinite returns.
Okay, I have to admit, infinite returns sounds a bit like a get-rich-quick scheme. What's that all about?
It's not about getting rich quick. It's about understanding how to create wealth without putting your own capital at risk.
That sounds like a magic trick. How is that even possible?
It's not magic. It's about leveraging other people's resources, their time, money, and expertise.
So finding ways to create value without having to invest our own money up front.
Exactly. They offer specific examples of how to achieve this. Think about building a business, creating intellectual property like a book or a course, or structuring deals that generate passive income.
It's like being the conductor of an orchestra, creating something beautiful and valuable by coordinating the talents of others.
That's a great analogy. They argue that this ability to generate infinite returns is one of the key secrets to wealth creation, a way to break free from the traditional constraints of earning a living through a job.
It's about thinking like an entrepreneur, seeing opportunities where others see limitations.
Exactly, and they emphasize that this isn't just about becoming rich. It's about achieving financial freedom, the ability to make choices based on what's important to you, not dictated by the need for a paycheck.
It's about living life on your own terms, creating a world where money is a tool, not a master.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of tools, one of the most important tools they highlight is financial education.
Okay, that makes sense. The more we know about money, the better equipped we are to manage it effectively.
Exactly. But they go a step further and argue that the traditional education system actually fails us when it comes to financial literacy.
So all those years of school, and we never learned the basics of personal finance.
That's their argument. They suggest that the current system, which emphasizes getting good grades, going to college, and getting a job, doesn't actually teach us how to manage money, create wealth, or navigate the complexities of the financial world.
It's like teaching someone how to drive a car without explaining how the engine works. You can get behind the wheel and go,
Yeah.
but you're not really in control.
Exactly. And they argue that this lack of financial education leaves us vulnerable to exploitation by those who do understand the system.
So we're essentially sent out into a financial jungle without a map or a compass. Easy prey for those who know how to navigate the terrain.
That's a powerful image. And it highlights the importance of seeking out alternative sources of financial education. Books, courses, mentors, anyone who can teach us the real rules of the game.
It's about becoming financially savvy, not just relying on what we learned or didn't learn in school.
Exactly. And it's a lifelong journey, constantly learning and adapting as the financial world evolves.
So it's not just about reading one book or taking one course. It's about becoming a lifelong learner when it comes to money.
Absolutely. Now, this might sound a bit radical, but they challenge a deeply ingrained belief in our society, the idea that we have to work for money.
Wait, are they suggesting that we should all quit our jobs and become lottery winners?
Not exactly. It's more about questioning the underlying assumptions of our current economic system and exploring alternative ways to create value and generate income.
So thinking outside the job box, looking for opportunities that might not fit the traditional mold.
Exactly. They point out that the concept of earning a living is relatively recent, a product of the Industrial Revolution and the rise of the wage-based economy.
So for most of human history, people didn't have jobs in the traditional sense.
Exactly. They lived off the land, traded goods and services, created things with their hands. There were many ways to generate value and provide for their families.
So they're not saying we should all go back to living in caves. It's about being open to different possibilities, different models for creating value and generating income.
Precisely. And they offer specific examples of how to do this, such as building businesses, creating intellectual property, and structuring deals that generate passive income, income that flows in even when you're not actively working.
It's like becoming a financial alchemist, transforming our time and talents into assets that produce ongoing wealth.
That's a great way to put it. They're encouraging us to become the architects of our own lives, designing a structure that supports our financial and personal goals. And they emphasize that this isn't about laziness or entitlement, it's about taking responsibility for our own well-being and creating a life of purpose and meaning.
It's about becoming the captain of our own ship, navigating the financial seas with knowledge and confidence. But let's bring this back to pensions for a moment. If this system is so flawed, as they argue, why do we even have them? What's the history and how did we get to this point?
The book actually delves into the origins of pensions, tracing their roots back to ancient Rome.
Okay, this is getting interesting. So pensions weren't just a 20th century invention.
Not at all. The Romans offered military pensions to their soldiers. It was a way to reward them for their service and ensure their loyalty.
So the concept of providing for those who have served or contributed to society has been around for centuries.
Exactly. But the modern pension system, as we know it, really took shape in the 19th and 20th centuries, with the rise of industrialization and the growth of large corporations.
It was a way to attract and retain workers, right? A form of social contract between employers and employees.
Exactly. And for a while, those defined benefit pension plans, which promised a fixed monthly income for life, worked relatively well. But as the book points out, things started to shift in the 1970s, with the rise of defined contribution plans, like the 401k.
And that's where GRUNCH comes back into play, right? The shift away from guaranteed pensions towards individual retirement accounts that we're responsible for managing ourselves.
Exactly. They argue that this shift coincided with other economic changes, like the move away from the gold standard and the rise of globalization. It was a perfect storm, so to speak. That created the conditions for the current pension crisis.
It's like a lot of pieces falling into place at the same time, creating a system that is more complex, less secure, and more susceptible to manipulation.
Precisely. And they argue that this shift has left many workers vulnerable, especially those who lack the financial literacy or the resources to manage their own retirement savings effectively.
It's like being handed a set of tools without being taught how to use them.
That's a great way to put it. You can have all the tools in the world, but if you don't know how to use them properly, you're likely to end up frustrated, confused, and maybe even injured.
And this is where their call for financial education becomes so crucial. It's about empowering individuals to take control of their own financial futures, regardless of the flaws in the system.
Absolutely. They don't just point out the problems, they offer solutions. And it all starts with knowledge and understanding.
It's about becoming the master builder of our own financial destiny, rather than relying on a system that might not have our best interests at heart. Now, there's a story in the book that really stuck with me. It's about Kiyosaki meeting a wealthy investor at a palace in Rome.
Oh, yes. That's a great one. It really highlights the difference in mindset between those who rely on traditional investments and those who think outside the box.
I love how he sets the scene, a palace in Rome. Imagine that. And this investor, surrounded by opulence, offers some simple yet profound advice.
Exactly. The investor tells Kiyosaki, 1/3 in land, 1/3 in art, and 1/3 in gold.
So diversifying beyond the typical stocks and bonds, investing in things that have intrinsic value.
Precisely. And it's a strategy that has stood the test of time. Land, art, and gold. These are tangible assets that have endured through economic ups and downs for centuries.
It's like you're saying, don't just chase the latest financial fad. Invest in things that have lasting power.
Exactly. And this ties into their critique of the modern financial system, which they argue is built on a foundation of debt and speculation.
It's like a house of cards. It might look impressive, but it's ultimately unsustainable.
Exactly. And this investor's advice offers a refreshing alternative, a way to build wealth that is grounded in real assets and a long-term perspective.
It's about creating a portfolio that can weather economic storms, not just ride the waves of the market.
Absolutely. And speaking of weathering storms, remember how they compare the current economic system to a house of straw? Vulnerable to the big bad wolf of GRUNCH? Well, this investor's advice is like building that house of bricks, that solid foundation for lasting wealth.
It's about shifting our focus from quick profits and speculation to building something solid and enduring. Now, I know they talk a lot about entrepreneurship in the book, but is that really the only path to financial freedom? What about those of us who aren't cut out to be entrepreneurs?
They definitely emphasize the power of entrepreneurship, but they also acknowledge that it's not the only path. Remember, the key is to think like an entrepreneur. Even if you're not running your own business, it's about being resourceful, creative, and proactive in managing your finances.
So it's about adopting an entrepreneurial mindset, even if we're working within a traditional job structure.
Exactly. And they offer practical tips on how to do this, even if you're not starting your own company. For example, they talk about the importance of developing multiple streams of income.
So not just relying on one paycheck, but finding ways to generate income from different sources.
Exactly. This could involve side hustles, freelance work, investments, or even creating passive income streams through things like online courses or rental properties.
It's about diversifying our income, just like we diversify our investment.
Precisely. And they also emphasize the importance of negotiating our salaries and benefits, understanding our worth, and not being afraid to ask for what we deserve.
So even within a traditional job, there are opportunities to be more entrepreneurial, to take control, and to maximize our earning potential.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not just about earning more. It's about managing what we earn wisely. That's where budgeting, saving, and investing come in.
So it's a holistic approach, thinking like an entrepreneur, generating multiple streams of income, managing our money effectively, and investing wisely.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership of our financial lives and creating a future where we have choices and options, regardless of what's happening in the broader economic landscape. Now, one thing that really struck me about the book was their emphasis on financial literacy, not just for ourselves, but for future generations.
That's so important. It's like breaking the cycle of financial illiteracy and empowering the next generation to make informed decisions.
Exactly. They argue that we have a responsibility to pass on our financial knowledge and wisdom to our children, grandchildren, and other young people in our lives.
So it's not just about teaching them how to balance a checkbook. It's about instilling a healthy mindset around money.
Absolutely. It's about having open conversations about money, teaching them basic financial skills, and most importantly, setting a positive example through our own financial choices.
It's like leading by example, showing them that it's possible to be financially responsible, to make smart choices, and to create a life of abundance.
Exactly. And they offer practical tips for doing this, from having family money meetings to involving children in budgeting decisions to teaching them about investing and entrepreneurship.
It's about planting the seeds of financial literacy early on, giving them the tools and the knowledge to navigate the complex world of money.
Absolutely. And they emphasize that this isn't about imposing our own beliefs or values on them. It's about empowering them to make informed choices and create their own paths to financial well-being.
Now, one thing that really struck me about the book was their discussion of pensions and how they fit into the broader economic landscape. They seem to be quite critical of the current system.
They definitely raise some serious concerns about the sustainability and fairness of the current pension system. Remember, they argue that it's been heavily influenced by GRU and sheesh, those powerful forces that benefit from complexity and opacity.
And they're particularly concerned about the shift from defined benefit plans, which offered a guaranteed monthly income for life, to defined contribution plans, like the 401k, which put more responsibility on individuals.
Exactly. They argue that this shift has left many workers vulnerable, especially those who lack the financial literacy or resources to manage their own retirement savings effectively.
So instead of having a reliable pension to rely on, we're now expected to become expert investors, navigating a complex and often volatile financial market.
That's their concern. And they point out that many people simply don't have the time, knowledge, or resources to do this effectively.
So what do they suggest we do about it? Should we just resign ourselves to a future of financial insecurity?
Absolutely not. They offer a lot of empowering advice. But it starts with acknowledging the problem and taking ownership of our financial futures.
So it's about becoming informed, educated, and proactive.
Exactly. And they offer specific steps we can take, starting with understanding how our current pension plans work, what fees are being charged, and how our money is being invested.
It's like reading the fine print before signing a contract. You want to know what you're getting into.
Exactly. And they encourage pension beneficiaries to attend board meetings, ask questions, and demand transparency. Don't be afraid to speak up and advocate for your interests.
It's about taking ownership, right? Not just being a passive recipient of whatever the pension gods decide to bestow upon us.
Absolutely. And if there are serious concerns about mismanagement or fraud, they even suggest exploring the possibility of crowdfunding independent investigations.
That's a powerful idea. It's about harnessing the collective power of individuals to demand accountability.
Exactly, and they offer practical steps on how to do this, from organizing online groups to contacting investigative journalists.
So it's about becoming informed and empowered, not just accepting the status quo. It's about taking action, both individually and collectively, to create a more just and secure financial system.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that they emphasize throughout the book is the importance of having a long-term vision when it comes to our finances. It's not just about getting rich quick. It's about creating a life of sustainable abundance.
So it's about thinking beyond the next paycheck, beyond the next investment, and considering our financial goals in the context of our overall life goals.
Exactly. And they encourage readers to develop a clear picture of what they want their lives to look like, both financially and personally.
It's like creating a roadmap for our financial journey, a destination to aim for.
Exactly. And then it's about breaking down that big goal into smaller, more manageable steps, creating a plan that we can follow consistently.
So it's not just about dreaming big. It's about taking action and making those dreams a reality.
Absolutely. And they offer specific strategies for doing this. From setting SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, to creating a vision board, to simply writing down our goals and reviewing them regularly.
So it's about creating a clear vision, a plan, and a system for accountability.
Exactly. And they also emphasize the importance of celebrating our successes along the way, no matter how small they might seem.
That's so important. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day grind and forget to acknowledge our progress.
Exactly. And celebrating our wins, even the small ones, helps to build momentum and keep us motivated on our financial journey.
It's like giving ourselves a pat on the back, acknowledging our efforts,
Yeah.
and reminding ourselves that we're making progress.
Exactly. Now, speaking of celebrating, there's a chapter in the book that might seem a bit counterintuitive. It's about the value of mistakes.
Wait, are they saying that we should intentionally make mistakes with our money?
Not exactly. It's more about recognizing that mistakes are inevitable, and they can actually be valuable learning experiences.
So it's about changing our perspective on failure, seeing it as an opportunity for growth rather than something to be feared or avoided.
Exactly. Kiyosaki, in particular, draws on his own experiences as an entrepreneur. He argues that he learned more from his failures than from his successes.
It's like the old saying, you learn more from your falls than from your triumphs.
Exactly. And they emphasize that the key is to not let the fear of failure paralyze us. It's about embracing the possibility of mistakes, but learning from them and using them as stepping stones to future success.
So it's about adopting a growth mindset, seeing challenges as opportunities for development.
Absolutely. They even suggest that the traditional education system, which often punishes mistakes, actually hinders our ability to learn and adapt.
It's like teaching someone to ride a bike by telling them not to fall. It's impossible to master a skill without experiencing a few bumps and bruises along the way.
Exactly. They encourage readers to embrace a more entrepreneurial approach to life, where experimentation and risk-taking are seen as essential ingredients for success.
So it's about being willing to step outside our comfort zones, to try new things, and to learn from our missteps.
Absolutely. And they offer specific strategies for turning mistakes into valuable lessons, from keeping a failure journal to analyzing what went wrong and how we can do things differently next time, to seeking out mentors who can guide us through challenges.
It's about reframing our relationship with failure, seeing it as a natural part of the learning process.
Exactly. Now, shifting gears a bit, there's a chapter that explores the link between our financial well-being and our emotional state.
Okay, that makes sense. Money can be a source of stress, anxiety, and even conflict in our lives.
Absolutely. And they argue that our financial well-being is not just about numbers. It's also about our overall sense of peace, security, and happiness.
So it's not just about having money, it's about having a healthy relationship with money.
Exactly. They introduce the concept of a financial thermostat, which is a great analogy.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this financial thermostat.
They suggest that we all have an internal thermostat that determines our level of financial comfort or discomfort.
So some people might feel comfortable with a lot of money in the bank, while others might feel anxious even if they have a healthy savings account.
Exactly. And they argue that this thermostat is often set by our childhood experiences, our beliefs about money, and the messages we received growing up.
So it's like a subconscious program that's running in the background, influencing our financial choices and behaviors.
Precisely. And the good news is that this thermostat can be adjusted, but it requires conscious effort and a willingness to challenge our limiting beliefs about money.
So it's about becoming aware of those subconscious patterns and making a conscious choice to change them.
Exactly. And they offer specific techniques for doing this, from visualization exercises to affirmations to surrounding ourselves with positive financial influences.
So it's about creating a supportive environment for financial growth, both internally and externally.
Absolutely. And they emphasize that this isn't about denying or suppressing negative emotions. It's about developing a healthy relationship with money, one that is based on abundance, gratitude, and empowerment.
It's about becoming the master gardener of our own financial landscape, cultivating a fertile ground for prosperity and well-being.
That's a beautiful analogy. And speaking of fertile ground, they also talk about the importance of building a strong financial foundation.
Okay, so back to the basics.
Exactly. They emphasize the importance of creating a solid budget, managing debt, and building an emergency fund.
It's like laying the groundwork for a house. You need a stable base before you can start building the walls and the roof.
Precisely. And they offer practical tips for doing this, from tracking your expenses to negotiating lower interest rates to automating your savings.
So it's about creating a system that supports our financial goals and protects us from unexpected setbacks.
Absolutely. And they emphasize that this isn't about deprivation. It's about making conscious choices that align with our values and our long-term vision.
It's about taking control of our finances and creating a solid foundation for financial freedom.
Exactly. Now, one of the things that really resonated with me in the book was their discussion of the importance of believing in ourselves, especially when it comes to our financial capabilities.
That makes sense. It's easy to get discouraged when we're bombarded with messages about economic uncertainty, financial scams, and the challenges of achieving financial success.
Absolutely. And they argue that many of us are carrying around invisible baggage from our past experiences, beliefs that are holding us back from achieving our full potential.
So it's not just about external obstacles. It's about the internal barriers we create for ourselves.
Exactly. They suggest that we might have limiting beliefs about money, about our own abilities, or even about what's possible for us to achieve.
It's like carrying around a heavy suitcase full of doubts and fears.
That's a great analogy. And they offer techniques for identifying and releasing these limiting beliefs.
So it's about becoming aware of those negative thoughts and then consciously choosing to replace them with more empowering beliefs.
Exactly. And they suggest various techniques for doing this, from journaling to meditation to working with a therapist.
It's like clearing out the clutter in our minds, creating space for new, empowering beliefs to take root.
Absolutely. And they emphasize that this isn't about denying our past experiences. It's about reframing them and choosing to focus on the lessons learned and the strengths we've developed.
So it's about turning those negative experiences into fuel for growth, using them to propel us forward rather than hold us back.
Exactly. They encourage readers to become the heroes of their own financial stories, overcoming challenges and emerging stronger and more resilient.
I love that. It's about reclaiming our power,
Yeah,
believing in ourselves, and creating a narrative of success.
absolutely. Now, this might sound a bit woo-woo, but they also talk about the power of intuition when it comes to making financial decisions.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Are they suggesting that we should just throw out logic and reason and let our emotions run wild?
Not at all. It's more about recognizing that our intuition can be a valuable source of information, especially when it comes to making complex decisions.
So it's about trusting our gut feeling, that inner voice that often knows what's best for us, even if we can't logically explain it.
Exactly. They argue that our intuition is often tapping into a deeper level of knowing, drawing on our experiences, our values, and even our subconscious observations.
So it's not just about ignoring logic. It's about integrating our intuition into our decision-making process.
Precisely. They offer techniques for developing and trusting our intuition, from meditation to journaling to simply paying attention to those subtle feelings and nudges we get.
So it's about becoming more attuned to our inner wisdom, learning to listen to that quiet voice that often knows what's best for us, even if we can't always explain why.
Exactly. And they emphasize that this isn't about becoming psychic or predicting the future. It's about tapping into a deeper level of knowing that can help us make sound financial decisions.
Now, they also talk about the importance of planning for the future, right? But how do we plan for the future when the economic landscape seems so uncertain?
That's a great question. They acknowledge that the future is unpredictable, but they argue that having a plan, even a flexible one, is essential for achieving our financial goals.
So it's not about creating a rigid plan that we have to stick to no matter what. It's about having a roadmap that can guide us and help us stay on track.
Exactly. And they offer specific strategies for creating a financial plan,
Right.
from setting clear financial goals to breaking down those goals into smaller, actionable steps, to tracking our progress along the way.
It's like planning a trip. You need to know where you're going and how you're going to get there before you can start packing your bags.
That's a great analogy. And they also emphasize the importance of regularly reviewing and adjusting our plans as needed, based on our changing circumstances and goals.
So it's not a one-time exercise. It's an ongoing process of planning, evaluating, and adjusting.
Exactly. And they also stress the importance of seeking out professional advice when needed, whether it's from a financial advisor, a tax accountant, or an estate planning attorney.
So it's about building a team of experts who can help us navigate the complexities of personal finance.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that really struck me about the book was their emphasis on simplifying our financial lives.
That makes sense. The world of finance can be incredibly complex and overwhelming.
Exactly. And they argue that this complexity often works to our disadvantage. They encourage readers to declutter their finances, get organized, and streamline their money management systems.
So it's about creating a sense of order and control, making it easier to track our spending, manage our investments, and make informed financial decisions.
Precisely. And they offer practical tips for doing this, from consolidating accounts to automating bill payments to going paperless.
It's like cleaning out a closet. Getting rid of the things we no longer need or use creates space for the things that truly matter.
That's a great analogy. And they emphasize that this isn't about becoming a financial minimalist. It's about finding a system that works for us and simplifies our lives.
So it's about reducing financial stress and creating a sense of peace and clarity when it comes to money.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of stress, there's a chapter in the book that dives into the importance of protecting ourselves from financial scams and predators.
That's a timely topic.
Yeah.
It seems like there are more and more scams and schemes popping up every day designed to prey on unsuspecting investors.
They definitely see this as a growing problem, and they use a rather vivid term to describe these predators: financial vampires.
Okay, that paints a pretty disturbing picture. So how do we protect ourselves from these financial vampires?
They offer a number of strategies, starting with being aware of common scams.
So educating ourselves about the tactics used by scammers so we can recognize the red flags.
Exactly. And they also emphasize the importance of safeguarding our personal information, being cautious about who we trust, and seeking out reputable financial advisors.
So it's about being proactive, doing our research, and not falling for easy promises or get-rich-quick schemes.
Exactly. They also talk about the importance of having a healthy skepticism when it comes to financial advice, even from people we trust.
So not just blindly following the advice of friends, family members, or financial gurus.
Precisely. They encourage readers to ask questions, to do their own research, and to make sure that any investment advice they receive aligns with their own financial goals and risk tolerance.
It's about taking ownership of our financial decisions, not just blindly following the crowd.
Absolutely. Now, they also delve into the emotional toll that financial stress can take on our lives.
That's so important. Financial worries can weigh heavily on our minds and even affect our physical health and relationships.
Exactly. They use the term financial toxicity, which is a powerful metaphor. It suggests that financial stress can poison our lives, creating a toxic environment that affects everything we do.
So how do we deal with this financial toxicity? How do we manage the stress and anxiety that often comes with money worries?
They offer a number of strategies, starting with developing healthy coping mechanisms.
So things like exercise, meditation, spending time in nature, activities that help us de-stress and clear our minds.
Exactly. And they also emphasize the importance of seeking out professional help when needed, whether it's from a therapist, a financial counselor, or a debt management specialist.
So it's about recognizing that we don't have to struggle alone. There are resources and support available to help us navigate these challenges.
Absolutely. And they also talk about the importance of creating a supportive network of friends and family, people we can talk to and confide in when we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed.
So it's about reaching out for help and support, not trying to deal with everything on our own.
Exactly. And they emphasize that this isn't about denying or suppressing our feelings. It's about developing healthy ways to cope with stress and seeking out support when we need it.
It's about taking care of our emotional well-being, which is just as important as our financial well-being.
Absolutely. Now, shifting gears a bit, there's a chapter that explores the power of gratitude when it comes to our financial lives.
Okay, this sounds intriguing. How does gratitude tie into money?
They argue that gratitude can be a powerful antidote to financial scarcity and stress.
So it's about focusing on what we have rather than what we lack.
Exactly. They suggest that even when we're facing financial challenges, there are always things to be grateful for.
So it's about shifting our perspective, finding those silver linings, even in the midst of financial storms.
Exactly. They argue that cultivating gratitude can help to shift our energy from scarcity to abundance, attracting more of what we want into our lives.
So it's not just about feeling good. It's about creating a positive feedback loop that can actually improve our financial situation.
Precisely. And they offer practical techniques for cultivating gratitude, from keeping a gratitude journal to expressing appreciation to others, to simply taking time to notice the good things in our lives.
So it's about training our minds to focus on abundance rather than lack.
Exactly. And they emphasize that this isn't about becoming Pollyannish or ignoring the realities of our financial situation. It's about developing a mindset of appreciation that allows us to see opportunities even in the midst of challenges.
It's like looking for the treasure hidden in plain sight, finding those nuggets of gold even in the midst of financial rubble.
That's a great analogy. And speaking of taking action, there's a chapter that really resonated with me. It's about the importance of taking action.
Okay, that makes sense. It's one thing to read about financial strategies and quite another to actually implement them.
Exactly. They argue that knowledge is only powerful if it's applied. They use the phrase paralysis by analysis, which I think a lot of us can relate to.
Oh, absolutely. It's that tendency to overthink things, to get stuck in the planning stage and never actually take the leap.
Exactly. They encourage readers to move beyond planning and into action, to start taking concrete steps toward their financial goals, even if they're small ones.
So it's about breaking down those big, overwhelming goals into smaller, more manageable steps.
Exactly. They argue that even small actions can create momentum and lead to significant results over time.
It's like that old saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Absolutely. And they offer specific strategies for overcoming procrastination and taking action. From setting deadlines to breaking down large tasks into smaller chunks to finding an accountability partner.
So it's about creating a system that supports action that helps us to stay focused and motivated.
Exactly. And they emphasize that this isn't about becoming reckless or impulsive. It's about taking calculated risks, learning from your mistakes, and consistently moving forward.
It's about becoming the master of our own financial momentum.
That's a great way to put it. Now, building on that idea of momentum, they also talk about the importance of developing positive financial habits.
So it's not just about taking action, it's about creating consistent, positive actions that become ingrained in our daily lives.
Exactly. They argue that our financial success is largely determined by our habits, those small, everyday actions that we repeat over and over again.
It's like brushing our teeth or exercising regularly. It's not about willpower, it's about creating a system that makes easy to do the right things consistently.
That's a great analogy. And they offer specific strategies for developing positive financial habits, from automating our savings to tracking our spending to setting financial goals and reviewing them regularly.
So it's about creating a financial autopilot, so to speak, that guides us toward our goals, even when we're not actively thinking about them.
Exactly. And they emphasize that this isn't about becoming a financial robot. It's about finding a balance between structure and flexibility, creating a system that supports your unique needs and lifestyle.
It's about becoming the master of our own financial habits, creating a set of positive routines that empower us to manage our money effectively and achieve our goals effortlessly. Now, one of the most empowering concepts in the book is the idea of delegation.
Yes, delegation is such a powerful tool, not just in business, but in our personal finances as well.
So it's about recognizing that we don't have to do everything ourselves, that we can leverage the expertise of others to help us achieve our financial goals.
Exactly. They encourage readers to step into the role of a financial CEO, building a team of experts who can support us in areas where we might not have the time, knowledge, or skills.
So instead of trying to be a jack of all trades, we can surround ourselves with specialists who can handle specific tasks more efficiently and effectively.
Exactly. They offer specific strategies for delegating effectively, from identifying tasks that can be outsourced to finding qualified professionals to setting clear expectations and boundaries.
So it's about letting go of control, trusting others to do their jobs, and freeing ourselves up to focus on our strengths and passions.
Absolutely. And they emphasize that this isn't about becoming a control freak or micromanaging every detail. It's about leveraging the power of collaboration to achieve greater financial success.
Now, they also talk about the importance of celebrating our achievements. which might seem a bit frivolous in the context of serious financial planning, but I think it's so important.
Absolutely. Celebrating our wins, both big and small, is crucial for maintaining motivation and momentum.
It's like giving ourselves a pat on the back, acknowledging our efforts,
Yeah.
and reminding ourselves that we're on the right track.
Exactly. And they offer specific strategies for celebrating our financial successes. From treating ourselves to something special, to sharing our accomplishments with loved ones, to simply taking time to reflect on our progress and appreciate how far we've come.
So it's about acknowledging our wins, savoring the journey, and allowing ourselves to feel proud of what we've accomplished.
Exactly. And they emphasize that this isn't about becoming complacent or boastful. It's about recognizing our accomplishments and using them to fuel our continued growth.
Now, one of the most inspiring aspects of the book is their emphasis on giving back.
Yes, they make a powerful argument that financial abundance is not just about accumulating wealth for ourselves, it's also about using our resources to make a positive impact in the world.
So it's about recognizing that we're part of something bigger than ourselves,
Right.
that our financial success can be a force for good.
Exactly. They encourage readers to find ways to align their financial goals with their values and to use their resources to support causes that are meaningful to them.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where our passion and our purpose intersect with our financial resources.
Exactly. And they offer specific strategies for giving back. From donating to charities, to volunteering our time, to supporting local businesses, to mentoring young entrepreneurs.
So it's not just about writing a check, it's about finding creative and meaningful ways to make a difference.
Absolutely. And they emphasize that this isn't about feeling obligated or guilty. It's about finding joy and purpose in sharing our abundance with others.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch on one final point that really stuck with me. It's this idea that GRUNC thrives on secrecy and complexity.
That's such a crucial insight. They argue that the more opaque and confusing the financial system is, the easier it is for those in power to manipulate it to their advantage.
It's like a magician's trick. The more smoke and mirrors, the easier it is to distract us from what's really going on.
Exactly. And they encourage readers to become financial detectives, to ask questions, demand transparency, and challenge the status quo.
So it's about becoming informed and empowered, not just blindly accepting what we're told or following the crowd.
Absolutely. And they offer specific strategies for doing this, from educating ourselves about financial concepts to seeking out independent sources of information to joining forces with others to demand accountability.
It's about becoming financial activists, using our knowledge and our voices to create a more just and transparent financial system.
Exactly. And they emphasize that this isn't about becoming cynical or distrustful. It's about reclaiming our power as individuals and using it to create a better world for ourselves and future generations.
So what does this all mean? What's the key takeaway for listeners?
I think the book's message can be summed up in that powerful phrase, "It's our money, stupid." They're urging us to wake up, to take control, and to demand a financial system that works for everyone, not just the privileged few.
It's a call to action, a challenge to become informed, empowered, and engaged in shaping our financial futures.
Absolutely. And they offer practical steps we can take, from educating ourselves to diversifying our investments to becoming financial activists.
It's about recognizing that we have more power than we realize, and that together we can create a financial system that is fair, transparent, and sustainable.
Exactly. It starts with each of us taking responsibility for our own financial well-being, making informed choices, and using our resources wisely.
Who Stole My Pension is more than just a book about pensions. It's a wake-up call for all of us. It's a challenge to question the status quo and create a better financial future for ourselves and generations to come.
I couldn't agree more. It's a book that has the potential to transform lives if we're willing to take its message to heart.
And for those of you who want to continue your financial education journey, be sure to check out lingopediamagazine.com for extra courses and ebooks.
Always a good idea to keep learning and growing.
Remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to securing your future. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like this